3 o'clock on this Wednesday afternoon. Welcome aboard the Postgame Show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. A lot to get to on this afternoon's program. In just a few seconds, we will be joined by South Carolina Athletics Director Ray Tanner. A lot to discuss with Coach. We hadn't had him in over a month since the end of basketball season, so we got some basketball recaps. We'll obviously talk a lot about what's going on with the baseball program. We'll get into South Carolina's NIL law that was passed last week across the street at the State House, and a whole lot more. And time permitting, and I hope there is time, I might get Coach to revisit one of my favorite stories that he tells about his time as a head coach. But he doesn't know which one it is yet. So I'll spring that on him a little bit later on. Always a pleasure to have you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today, Jay?
I'm good. Just go ahead and rack up all of the good, fun baseball stories that you've got, all of them, and then I'm going to have you tell one later on, okay? So you just have to be ready for any of them, and I'll let you know which one. I'll put you on the spot. Let's jump right in, Coach, because we got so much to get to, and I promise you we can't get it all done in an hour. Baseball had a rough weekend, but it's having a good season. And I know that's hard for you to watch. It's hard for fans to watch. And you know, a lot of folks felt there was a complete meltdown last weekend against Georgia. Overall, give us, and obviously you know as much about this program as anyone, give us where Ray Tanner is after what happened last week, but trying to put all of that into the 2024 season.
Well, you know, when you talk about today, I mean, we ran into a hornet's nest last weekend in Georgia. What an offensive juggernaut that they have, and they've been swinging the bats all year, and they came in here and just did a heck of a job. I mean, we were in a couple positions at times for good things to happen, but they could hit their way out of it. But we've had obviously go back to the Vandy series where we swept, and we beat Florida 2 out of 3, and we beat Kentucky here at home. So a lot of good things have happened. But, the most recent series was home against Georgia, and we were trying to stay in position to potentially be a postseason host. And we still could be, but there's work to be done probably this weekend and at the SEC tournament to get us back in that position.
When you look at where the pitching is right now and you look at some of the things that you remember from your time, what was the hard moment where you knew you had a team that was better than it looked? And you just, and you had to pick your guys up off the mat. And do you feel like Mark is potentially having to do that this week? I mean, 2 weeks ago, as he told us, Dylan Eskew shut out the number one team in the country. And then suddenly Dylan can't find the strike zone. And the guys, as you mentioned, ran into a terrific team and they didn't have it. When are those moments when you remember having to just tell your guys, hey, you are better than this, but you've got to go play baseball again? Well,
it's tough. I mean, because for the majority of our season this year, you go back to the pitching staff, was not maybe a staff that was highly regarded in the SEC, but yet we had pitched very well and had given the team an opportunity to win from a pitching standpoint and the jobs that Matt Williams had done. But the pitchers had been outstanding for the most part. And then recently, last 3-4 weeks, they haven't been quite as good. And that's part of it. It happens. I mean, you can look around this league. It's not a league that you can survive unless you're really close to your best. You can look at the season LSU's having. They're trying to fight their way out. Florida is really a good team. There's no question about it. Look where they are today. So those things do happen, and you don't want them to. You want to stay ahead of the curve a little bit. You're not going to go undefeated. I know there's been some good teams that have won 20 or a few more than that at times, but majority of teams are fighting to get in a position, number one, to host, but certainly to get into a postseason play. And going through this league is a gauntlet. And that's, we got to bounce back now. We're going to Knoxville to, one of the better teams in the country. But, those are challenges, but certainly great opportunities as well. And hopefully we'll play really well this weekend.
Ray Tanner's on with us right now. And Ray, yesterday we had Mitch Light from The Athletic on to talk about if this team's really in danger of missing the NCAA tournament. And we came to the conclusion we don't think so. But Jay and I were talking today. We realized, you've been in the room where it happens, where this type of tournament's laid out, including being chair of the selection committee. So as somebody who's been in that position before, how do you evaluate the body of work that this Gamecock baseball team has done so far and where you think they're able to stand?
Well, you mentioned some key words there with body of work and having served on that committee for 4 years. That was something that I said quite often, because you go into that selection room at the end of the season and you talk about a few teams that maybe didn't play as well late. Well, that's got a lot to do with who you played. Maybe you weren't playing your best baseball, but it is about the body of work. So we've got really good numbers. Our metrics are good. I mean, we played, I think that once we go to Tennessee, we're probably playing, I believe it's the top 7 teams in the country that we would have played by ranking. So we're not gonna be short when it comes to metrics. We hope we win a few more games, and then that puts us in the position we need to be in. But things do get talked about. You always talk about the last 10, which I was never a big proponent of talking about the last 10, because body of work to me was more important. But we've got good numbers, and hopefully we can finish in a good way, and that takes care of a lot of conversation that we're having.
Going back, and I think I've asked you this before in some form or fashion through the years, but so forgive me, I can't remember exactly when or how, Coach, but 08 and 09 we talked about were tough years for your program after the trips to Omaha and the trips to the Supers and championships or co-championships in the conference, and then bounced in 2 consecutive regionals on the road. And that was kind of a, in a relative sense, Coach, a low point. Of course, everybody knows the next 3 seasons you played for the national title. But what do you remember about those days? And do you see any similarities with where things are for the program now? You're heading to the tournament. You know it's a good team, but it's just not what you want it to be. And do you ever struggle to figure out why?
Yes. I mean, especially when you sit in the chair that I sat in, Mark Kingston sitting in it. It keeps you up at night, because you want to be able to fix it, whatever that is. But that's just not the way the game's played. I mean, you look at the big leagues, and the Twins go on a roll and win 11, 12 in a row, and other teams are scuffling, but they pick it back up. They play 162. We play 56. So it's a lot different. But it only takes a spark or two for something to turn it around, and that's hopefully you get a chance to go to Tennessee against a great team, and if you can play really well in the beginning of that series, it could change not only the series but where you go from there. So it's hard sometimes. You're looking for that big outing. Like Eskew against Kentucky was special, and then he was in the right spot against Georgia to finish that game. It didn't work out the way we wanted it to, but you just want to have that spark when you need it, and then things kind of start to roll a little bit. But I remember, when it was we were getting beat on the road in the regionals, it was hard, because you do search for the missing ingredient to change things up a little bit, whether it's personnel, whether it can be a change in positions, or whatever the case may be, that you're trying to catch a little momentum where you can run with it a little bit. And that's what it's all about, I think, college athletics. It's about who grabs the momentum at the right time.
When it comes to assessing Coach Kingston, I'm sure you're quite aware that a lot of fans were very disgruntled last weekend, and obviously the season is going on, and you've talked about it, we've talked about it. There's a lot to play for, and while it may be slim, there is still the chance of South Carolina hosting in the NCAA tournament. Take us through how you're evaluating now and what you're looking to when it comes to conversations with Mark when that time is right.
Well, I don't know that I would share, postseason conversations with you with any coach, but I would just tell you that you want to be in a position where people care, and they do care here. They want to win in baseball, and that's a big deal. I can remember, like it was yesterday, that we weren't playing particularly well back, maybe it was 08 and 09, maybe, that you pointed out, and a couple of our players were whining a little bit after the game that our fans were tough on them. And I listened. I listened to the conversation for a few minutes back in the locker room, and I said, "Hey guys, what do you want? What do you want? Do you want fans who care, or do you want fans to not care? We didn't play well today. We didn't win today. Whatever the case may be. So that's the expectation that you want to have, and I think that's okay. It's they're just telling you they care, they want to win, and that's the kind of environment that you want to be around, because they're going to be there for you when it's crunch time. And we were in a hosting situation, and maybe it's still possible. It might be a little bit more difficult now, but you can get in that situation with our fan base behind us. It makes a difference.
And Coach, you mentioned, maybe that player pressure too. And when you were coaching, as all coaches at this level do, you're not just, a strategic decision maker. You're not just coaching fundamentals. You're kind of playing psychologist a little bit too. What's kind of, I guess, your message to maybe some of these kids who are seeing a lot of what's online, seeing the angst, which happens in a weekend like you had against Georgia, to be able to maybe turn this around just within the walls of the locker room and within the conversations that these players had, like the ones that you just alluded to?
Well, that's a great point, great question. I mean, there is angst, there's pressure that, self-inflicted in many cases, the guys that want to do well. And, I evolved as a coach. I think sometimes I don't know if intense is the right word. I don't like to think that it is, but maybe put pressure on players that was undue, that it didn't help them. This is a game. Baseball is a game of failure. It just is. It will humble you. There's highs and lows, and you heard Coach Kingston speak about that a little bit this weekend. It is real, and seems like the great ones are able to put the adversity behind them quickly. They let the bad at bats, the bad plays, the bad pitching, they let it go as quick as they can, and they bounce back. So that's a real key. And there's some veteran players on our team right now, so I'm hoping that that kicks in. But they want to do well, and sometimes you do put yourself in a position that you try to do too much. But at the end of the day, you gotta try to make plays. You got to try to be in a position to be offensive or pitch really well. You can't let that negativity enter into it, and you got to play free. You really do, and it gives you a better chance to be successful.
Talking to Gamecock Athletics Director Ray Tanner here on the program. Got him for the full 3 o'clock hour, so we'll come back on the other side, get into what happened last week at the State House as the legislature passed an NIL law. What does that look like for the Gamecock Athletic Department? And we'll tie that in with some of the things going on nationally. A lot more to do with Coach Tanner as the postgame show rolls on. Welcome back into the postgame show on this Wednesday afternoon. Jay Phillips and Elijah Campbell with you from the Herndon Chevy Studios. Happy to be joined by South Carolina Athletics Director Ray Tanner. Always appreciate his time. I know, Coach, before we get into our next big topic, that our buddy Ryan McGee got in contact with you to talk about Coach Gilmore's retirement down at Coastal. And unfortunately, they didn't get to play their last home game against Clemson last night because of bad weather. But and I love that you said, well, there's really not a rivalry between us. You didn't really see Coastal that much. Obviously, an incredibly important 2 games back in 2010. But, how much better when you were doing your thing and Jack was doing his thing and Gary was doing his thing. You ever stop and think about how much better y'all made baseball in this state?
I did. I think it was, I don't know, one of those years you look up and you got 5 or 6 teams that are in the postseason from this state, and 3 hosting, and it was really special. It just speaks volumes to how many players wanted to play in this state or from this state that were playing for the teams. I know the landscape has changed quite a bit now, but talking about Coach Gilmore, what a career. I mean, I knew for many years how good they were. I wasn't disappointed those years that we didn't play them. They were so good. But we did play them quite a bit over the years. And then back when we beat them in 2010 at their place, I told our players when we survived, I said, you know what, we're not going to play anybody any better in Omaha than we just played. you guys have made it. This is a tremendous accomplishment. This team is really talented, the Coastal team, and we just advanced. So when we get to Omaha, you're not going to play anybody any better than we just played. That was a tremendous team. And I know he went on to win a national championship after that. But I always think back to, I think they were number 4 national seed at the time, really good team. But the job that Coach Gilmore did for so many years, we knew, you knew. I don't think people across the country necessarily knew, but they started to pay attention to the job that he did at Coastal, and just a great program, and attracted so many good players, had some really good assistants, and I know one's going to be taking over for him. So,
yeah.
But a salute to Coach Gilmore and the career that he's had for the Shots down there in Coastal.
Yeah, I remember being down on the field before game 2 and my first time around those Coastal kids, and I was like, oh my God, they had some dudes, Coach. I mean, they had some. I was like, man, you play football or baseball? What are we doing here? All right, so real quick, and I don't want to set it up where I tell the joke and the punchline before the comedian gets to tell, you in the role of the comedian here for a second, or at least the storyteller, but you do have one about talking to Adrian right around the time that Christian hit his home run. And I'd like you to maybe revisit that story for everybody, since it might be a bad memory for Coastal folk, but it was a good memory for y'all.
Well, there were so many versions with Adrian Morales, but when we were trying to come back from a deficit late in that game, Jackie was leading off that inning, and I remember talking to all 3 of those guys, Jackie and Adrian and Christian Walker, over around the batting circle, and I said, hey, we're in the right spot here to try to get this thing in a good position and win it. And I knew Jackie would be patient, and he would, he'd run that count full, or he'd get a good pitch to hit and could get on base. And I was telling Adrian, we got to get Walker to the plate. And I said, you got to be patient as well. And he didn't like that. he didn't like that address. And he was like, if that first one's in there, I'm going to bust it. I go, well, hold on a minute. Let's think about this. Let's think about making sure we're getting Christian to the plate. And we had a little banter back and forth, which was, Adrian and I did that quite a bit. But he bounced one over the bag for a double, and then set the stage for Christian. But that was Morales, one of the greatest competitors of all time. It's ironic that I was talking to Coach O'Sullivan down in Florida a few days ago, and he talked about Morales the whole time.
Yeah.
Because he was here for both of the championships, and while he didn't have the best numbers in the world, or the greatest power, the greatest speed, or even the best defensive guy, he was the ultimate consummate winner, is what he was.
Yeah.
And he made everybody around him better, and it was good. It was fun for me. Not many players will challenge you, and he did. And he didn't do it disrespectfully, but he would want to know why I was thinking a certain way, or why I did strategically, why I made a certain move. And sometimes he didn't accept it.
I can think of a few of those stories where you told one day, I forget what it wasn't in the playoffs, I don't think, but it's like, why are you screaming at me? And you were like, I'm not screaming at you. I'm your coach. I'm here to tell you what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, he was good. He's doing a great job coaching today, and I'm not surprised that he's successful as a coach down in South Florida. But ever so often we talk, and I tell him, I made you who you are today. Of course, he tells me, I got you 2 rings. So it's like we go back and forth, but we have a good time.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah, there was some version in Myrtle Beach, too, of Walker can't hit a 3-run shot if you're not on base, right?
Yeah. He said, don't worry about me. But yeah, he was a special player, fun to coach.
Yeah. He'd have probably gotten some pretty good NIL opportunities as I segue into that one, Coach. And last week, the South Carolina legislature, after one little late hiccup, did pass the NIL law. And the governor signed it. It's good to go now. How ready is the South Carolina Athletics Department to do what this bill allows for?
Well, you give me a great opportunity to say thank you, publicly to all of, our senators and our House members who listened to us and gave us an opportunity to visit with them for many months to try to position this. As you know, Coach Beamer, Coach Staley, Coach Sweeney, the Coastal coaches, Matt Hogue at Coastal, the athletic director, and Graham Neff, we were all at the State House periodically visiting, trying to make sure that everyone understood this is a benefit to our state, not to Clemson or South Carolina or anybody in particular. It was for the student athletes that play in the state of South Carolina. We needed an opportunity to take advantage of the assets that we have, which are, the ITE and the Gamecock Club, and to use our assets, because in the NIL space before, if a donor made a donation or went through a collective, they didn't get any credit in as far as parking or tickets or rankings or any of that. This bill now allows that to happen. So it puts us in a better position to compete, if you will, in this landscape, and it's evolving, and there may be changes ahead. We'll have to wait and see, but we're very grateful that we're in a position now, hopefully with the governor's signature, that we move forward and position our universities better than we were before.
Coach, what's the timeline look like for you bringing NIL in-house, whether it's, folding the Garnet Trust in, something different, something new? Do you want to do, if it allows for that, but is that something that you want to snap your fingers and do? Is that going to take a little time? Give us an update on how that looks.
Well, I think it can be different, Jay, at different places according to, how they want to operate. The Garnet Trust has been really good and done a great job. Jeremy Smith and Mark Burnett, they've done a really nice job, and we have lots of collaboration, and some schools potentially will bring NIL in house. I don't know that we'll necessarily end up in that space. Our collective likely will still be involved. Maybe it's arranged a little bit different than it is now, but we were pleased with what the Garnet Trust brought and how they handled their business with us, and like I said, the collaboration. So some collectives have been viewed as not being in coordination with athletics or distant or doing their own thing. That wasn't the case with the Garnet Trust. So we were pleased from that standpoint, and I think that here, according to as we move forward, I would anticipate that the Garnet Trust would remain involved in what we do.
Talking to Coach Ray Tanner, and again, the state of South Carolina NIL law has been passed, so more control at least for schools in that particular realm. Come back on the other side. We'll stay with NIL, but branch out to the national perspective as a few big lawsuits may be nearing a settlement. We'll talk with Coach about how that might directly affect the USC budget coming up here on the Postgame Show. Talking all things Gamecock athletics, or at least as much as we can fit into the 3 o'clock hour here on the Postgame Show, along with Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Coach Ray Tanner, kind enough to join us for the full 3 o'clock hour. We have talked baseball. Coach has remembered Gary Gilmore as the great coach that he was at Coastal as his time with the Chanticleers nears an end. Got in a little Adrian Morales story, and we've talked state of South Carolina NIL law. So we've checked those boxes, Coach, and I'll stay with NIL, but in a little bit of a different form right now. And I know a lot of this is speculative, so as a sitting AD in the Southeastern Conference, I don't know how much leeway you have, but all of us that follow college sports have been following the House versus NCAA case, which the plaintiffs, former athletes, to remind people, are suing for back pay of NIL they were not allowed to receive, and that could be a lot of money for NCAA member schools. There is a settlement that is being worked on right now, and one of the things, Coach, that I want to ask you about is that the potential settlement may set aside roughly $20 to $25 million per school, at least those that can afford it, to directly pay athletes for name, image, likeness, because it's not supposed to be pay for play. How are you following that? As much as you can say about how you're looking at this and your colleagues in the conference are looking at this, are you hopeful that this brings us into a new, more collaborative era when it comes to college athletics?
Well, to answer your question, yes, I hope it brings us in a better place collaboratively, that we're sort of all working in the same space. I'm assuming that you read the ticker every morning, the D1 ticker, which is good material that kind of updates on what happened the night before or the day before. And, I think they've captured it pretty well. I won't say it's 100% accurate. I don't know that. But we met last week as athletic directors in person. The presidents and chancellors of the Southeastern Conference are very much engaged in this process. So we'll see where it ends up. But you mentioned a potential settlement. That certainly, something that has been discussed is on the table. So we'll see where that lands potentially in the next couple of weeks, if not sooner. I've said from the very beginning, Jay, that I believe in name, image, and likeness for student athletes, and we've made so much progress over the years with cost of attendance, with the educational benefits. It's the Austin case, which resulted in financial rewards academically. So we've done a lot, but it doesn't necessarily have to stop anywhere, because I think athletes should be monetized based on their fair market value of name, image, and likeness. Where we might have lost our way is those three words, for fair market value, because you see some numbers occasionally that you scratch your head that, is that really the fair market value of a particular player, regardless of the sport? So I think that we need to get to a place that, maybe the landscape is a little bit more clear than it is today, and then we move forward. Yes, you referred to budgets and finances. Those are things that you have to be concerned about, and keep in mind that new legislation in most cases is permissive. It's not mandatory. It's permissive legislation.
That's a good point. But yeah, and that's what a lot of states are doing too. And one of the things that I did see, Coach, is that this settlement wouldn't necessarily supersede state law. So you're good with that portion of it potentially?
Well, I think that there's an opportunity that it works both ways. That state law is okay, and then a settlement situation would not hamper anything that we're doing as well. So they work in conjunction.
Okay.
And Ray, you hit on the one thing that is my biggest issue with what we have in the NIL landscape right now. It's that fair market value, right? And kind of a lack of transparency doesn't really allow us to have a great idea of what the fair market value is. And I think one thing that does get lost in a lot of these conversations when it comes to legislating this is, making certain things transparent. The same way that an NFL quarterback in free agency can compare his numbers and his achievements to a similar quarterback, and we can establish that market. How achievable do you think this could be, given the current landscape, given current legislation, and what you're hearing from maybe other athletic directors and seeing from other NIL collectives and athletic departments?
Well, it's let's be realistic. It's not perfect. It probably will never be perfect, but with transparency, with fair market value, I think there's a better opportunity that the landscape is better. And you're not gonna, if you're doing NIL deals, fair market value. I mean, it's like how much you pay for a house. It's how much you're willing to pay. In many cases, so you have to. I think it really has to be transparent, as you mentioned, and then we go from there. But we'll see. There's still a lot to shake out. But I think we're getting a little bit closer than we were before. Ultimately, I think that we still think that Congress plays a role if that ever comes to pass. It hasn't yet, but we certainly have visited with people in Washington, and we've been there. So I'm not saying that they're not paying attention. I think they are. They were eager to listen and learn about our situation. And ultimately, I think things are better if Congress legislates it. But we're not there. Until we get there, we've got to get to the best place possible.
Coach, one of the other things that could be potentially coming out of this settlement is an end to scholarship limitations. And I don't know how many times that we've spoken with you, with Chad, with Mark about 11.7, but it's probably more than 11.7 times. Would you be in favor of that across the board? That might mean a lot more expense. Might mean some schools would even have to cut something, but it would certainly, I think, benefit the sport of baseball and some of those other sports that have limited scholarship opportunity right now.
Well, you can say, well, you're biased because you came from the baseball space, but 11.7 was extremely low for a roster of 40 players, and you're traveling 30 players this day and age. So there are other sports that can use more scholarships too, track and field for men and women. And I do like the fact that you have a roster limit, but potentially you have a roster limit, but scholarships are unlimited. I'm okay with that. It could make the playing field a little bit uneven if you go that way, because again, it's permissive. You're not mandated to give a certain number of scholarships, but it allows you to up to your roster limit in the case that you're referring to. So we'll see where that goes, but yes, I would be in favor. I think I've always said, we've got 21 sports here, 12 women's sports and 9 men's sports. It'd be great if everybody that your roster size, if everybody's on full scholarship. That's a lot of money, but it also is logical in a lot of ways also.
Before I take a break here, and I got some spring sports things that I want to get to for you in the final segment, but SEC meetings are coming up. You mentioned that you've just had some already in person, presidents and chancellors doing it, but your annual meetings down in Destin, at least spring meetings down in Destin coming up. What's number one potentially on Ray Tanner's agenda, and then maybe from a conference perspective, as much as you can share, what do y'all want to see get done this spring? What's the most pressing thing right now that you believe is facing the Southeastern Conference?
Well, that's a good question, and according to maybe what happens if there is some sort of settlement, you keep hearing the conversation. By the time we get to Destin, then that alters and changes the conversation a little bit. But I think that we'll discuss a lot of things that are happening with the transfer portal and different windows of opportunity to leave, and can we make some adjustments? Can you do it within the conference? Is it going to be national? There's just a lot of different perspectives to look at, and we continually, Commissioner Sankey, he doesn't miss anything. So we spend a lot of time in the details of what's the right thing to do for our student athletes and for our universities across the Southeastern Conference. So, football certainly will be discussed. We go to 16 teams next year, all one division except for women's soccer. They're the only sport that will have 2 divisions, and our schedules are done by now. So we're looking at a different schedule than years before. So there's a lot that'll be going on, and maybe some legislation, but I think that we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks before we get to Destin.
How closely, as an ACC alum and a former ACC head coach, are you looking at what's happening in that conference right now?
I haven't, I read the stories that are posted, and the same things that you see all the time, but I haven't followed it all that close. I know that it's interesting in many ways in what has happened, but I'm certainly proud of the Southeastern Conference and where we are today, and the leadership of Greg Sankey.
Come back, talk a little more spring sports, get a coach's recap on the basketball offseason, because it was eventful. Well, so was the end of the season, for that matter, and more with Coach Ray Tanner as the postgame show continues. Welcome back in. Final few minutes with Coach Ray Tanner here on this Wednesday afternoon. Jay and Elijah with you. We got a lot to get to around the country. We'll give you more detail on some new things on that potential House versus NCAA settlement. There's a lot that Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports has put out. We'll get into that for you, plus a few Gamecock football notes to get to. But, Coach, it's springtime. Bev Smith's team in the tournament. Bill McDonald's team in the tournament. Kaylin's in the tournament with her women's golf team. It's been a good spring so far. A lot of good things going on around track. So you're busy this time of year.
Yes, it's been actually pretty good. And you mentioned Coach Smith's team. They played pretty well lately. Their offense has come to life, and they've had good young pitching this year. So I think that going up to the regional at Duke, I think is a good draw for us. Duke's a really good team, and they're hosting, and we got to beat Utah before we advance. But I think they've got a chance. They're playing in the SEC, and as you know, every team in the league got a bid to the postseason.
And it's not the first time,
teams.
right? I don't think it's the first time that's happened.
No, it's not the first time, and we I think maybe 4 out of the last 6 years, something like that. That's just how difficult this conference is. Tough in all sports, but certainly women's softball is very competitive nationally, and deservingly so. They get an opportunity to go play, but Coach Smith had some really good pitching lately. We had a heartbreaking loss to Texas A&M in the tournament, but she can make some noise. You mentioned Coach McDonald's team. He just finished in the Baton Rouge Regional. He missed a cut to go to the national finals. I think we finished 8th. We had to be in the top 5.
Right.
Coach Anderson's team's out in Carlsbad, California. They had their practice round today. Tomorrow they start first round. Tomorrow's Thursday, so they start Friday, and they will play 54, and then the top 15 will play again the next day. And then there's the top 8 go to match play. So it's like 6 rounds in 5 days. So it's a lot of golf. I went out last year when they were in the finals to Scottsdale. So I went out there and watched him. But Coach Hall's done a great job in short time with track and field. He's got some really special talent that have won at a high level already. So good things are happening, and we want to continue to advance and be in the postseason and have some individual champions as well when it comes to track and field and golf if we advance individually. But Coach Anderson's team has been good all year, and I like our chances if we get out at the right time.
Who's the lucky sport administrator that gets to go with the women's golf team out to California?
Well, is that a setup question? Is that? I think that's a setup.
A little bit.
Yeah. So Charles Bloom is a sport oversight for golf, and he never misses an opportunity for a great trip.
A little birdie told me that maybe Bloom was getting to head out west, and I was like, oh, that's a good gig. That's a good gig.
Can't say I blame him.
If you can get it.
I told him, I said, don't think that I won't show up, because I'm known to do that.
I got just about 2 minutes left for you, so we'll squeeze it in. Obviously, we've talked a lot on this radio station and other places about the tremendous job that Dawn Staley and her team did in going undefeated and winning another national championship for this university. You also had a great year from Lamont Paris, and you've secured him long term. We haven't spoken to you since the end of basketball season, so we'll leave you with that. But that's about as good as it can get around here, and obviously you want bigger things for basketball, and looks like Lamont on his side is stepping up the recruiting thing. So looking good.
Well, you're right, and what a great second year with that team that he put together, and they just exuded selflessness on the court the entire season, and finished tied for second with some other teams, and just played hard the entire year. Good things happened. We had a tough opener in the NCAAs, but certainly a big jump from year one, and very happy with what they were able to accomplish. And then you talk about Coach Staley's team. I mean, it's just almost impossible. 3 losses, I guess, in 3 years. And this year they have a brand-new team. I mean, you talk about the year before that everybody basically was gone. She had some minutes back from the year before, but this was a new team. And did we think it was a talented team? Sure. I mean, she would tell you that. We've got a lot of really good players, but the on-court experience wasn't what other teams have been. But yet they went through the season unblemished. And, yeah, they had a few tough games, but not that many. And it seemed like that the fourth quarter was always ours, even if the other team was making a run at us. But just to stay undefeated the way that they did it with really a young team was so impressive, and to win a national championship again, you just can't say enough. I've been in that coaching seat. It's hard for a lot of people to really appreciate what was accomplished and the job that she's done in her career here. So it's phenomenal. And before you shut me off here, I want to tell you they also had a 3.0 GPA this spring.
Yeah.
17 of our 18 teams had a 3.0 this spring, Jay. So a lot of good things are happening, academically as well as in competition. We had a 3.37 overall, and that was our 35th consecutive semester with a 3.0. So Charlie Ball and her staff in Academic Enrichment Center, they position our student athletes to be successful. But just like in competition, players make plays.
Yep.
And our young men and young women do the work in the classroom to get the grades. I mean, we have great leadership, but the credit goes to the performers, and that's exciting when you get a chance to. The grade report comes out, and you go, my goodness, we are achieving at a high level, and there is life after sports, and I feel good about the leadership that we have in the Dodie Anderson Academic Enrichment Center, as I mentioned, Charlie Ball and her staff. So a shout out to them and all of our student athletes that have achieved at a high level.
Good stuff as always, sir. We appreciate you. We'll talk again soon over the summer. Thank you.
Good talking to you guys.
Yes, sir. That's Ray Tanner.